What's up, Hope TV family? It's your boy, Dr. J.C. Howard here, and I appreciate you locking into Christ and culture. And I have an exciting episode today. I'm super excited about it because one of my very best friends in this life, a good friend by the name of Reverend Edwin Robinson, he hails all the way from Dallas, Texas. I interviewed him because Edwin Robinson is a grassroots organizer. When it comes to political organizing, he's a national grassroots organizer. His job literally is to go all across this country and to help organizations to organize around elections and around voting issues. And I'm just so proud of him. But I talked to him specifically about the cross intersection of grassroots organizing and faith, and why the two work together, why the church and the political sector need to come to an agreement as it pertains to organizing and faith. What can the church do to be a better catalyst of justice in the community today? With everything that we're going through with George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and so many more who have literally, their lives have been taken at the hands of police brutality just this year and last year. We need to have more conversations around organizing, around protesting, and faith. And that's exactly what we're doing today on Hope TV. And so join your boy right here in Christ and Culture as we check out this interview with my beloved brother, national organizer and political strategist, Edwin Robinson. I promise you it's going to be blessed. Peace.
Community organizing, right? Like I said, the title, like you said, the title was thrown around so many times, but there's a textbook definition. And so I'll give the textbook definition of community organizing. It's a method of engaging and empowering people with increasing the influence of groups historically underrepresented in policies and decision-making that affect their lives. I'll say that one more time. Yeah. It's a method of engaging and empowering people with the purpose of increasing the influence of groups historically underrepresented in policies and decision-making that affect their lives, right? That's the textbook definition. To say that really simple, it's organizing people to collectively use their power to change their lived outcomes. That's the simple way to say it. It's organizing people to collectively use their power to change their lived outcomes. Fannie Lou Hamer talks about it, one of the greatest organizers of the 20th century and of all history, particularly I think in American history. She talks about organizing as taking a hand and being able to ball it up into a mighty fist. Yeah. To strike a blow for justice. Right? So it's taking the diffuse power of individual digits, us getting mad. You get mad, something happens, there's another shooting, another Black person is shot by the police, and you get angry. Right. And what do you do with that anger? Well, you can take it to social media, you can post some messages, you can write a letter, you can do a number of things on your own. Sure. But until you really organize all that power together, we're not really affecting change, right? We just saw with the recent uprisings after the George Floyd murder, right? The power of collecting people's voices, right? People say, well, what do marches do? And what does all these sorts of things do, right? Well, we see what it does. It all of a sudden we have district attorneys and we have attorney generals using the talking points of activists because those talking points have risen so loudly in the public space, right? We have Bakari Sellers, right, who is a CNN contributor, right? We have all these high-level people, and these would be the grass tops people, right, using the language of the grassroots. Now, all of a sudden, as they're on TV, why? Because we collectively organized that power. We collectively organized that message. We took it to the streets, and we didn't use just one voice, but we used millions of voices to megaphone that out. So now it's a part of our culture. Yeah, that's what organizing does. It creates culture.
That's super dope that you made that you connected those contours between how actually grassroots organizing, it actually collects culture. It actually helps to formulate culture in a particular kind of way. Now, I want you to really kind of stay there for a second, Ed, because I think it's powerful what you're speaking to right now, particularly as you see a rise in the millennial generation, probably most dominantly, of course, Generation X as well, but definitely the millennial generation, and even Generation Z, right? Which they're called for now. We don't know what they're going to be called eventually, but even Generation Z, my daughter's generation, your goddaughter's generation, these young African American boys and girls, not just African American, but minoritized communities, the way in which they're now exposed, right, to social injustice, political injustice, economic injustice, judicial injustice, how they are exposed to it so regularly now, right? Whereas, when we were coming up, we watched documentaries of Dr. King being assassinated or John Kennedy being assassinated, whereas in real life, in real time, and not only that, but I mean, we didn't have the access to just immediate video content of the way that we do now. I mean, we were watching. There are individuals that saw George Floyd choked out with a knee to his neck for over 9 minutes in real time. There were in real time, people were seeing it, right, like live. And even as soon as she posted it, it goes viral. And so, because there's just so much exposure these days, you have a surge in young adults and even young people who want to channel the anger, who want to channel that energy. Hence, we see quote unquote protests. And we know most of the protests have been peaceful, but we've seen the interjection of some violence and looting in some of these protests, which we know are some alternative groups. And I don't know if we have enough time to deal with that. But nevertheless, Ed, how do we help these young individuals who are seeing people their age shot down in the middle of the street? How do we help them to channel that energy into a grassroots kind of movement that took place at particularly at the death of Michael Brown, when we got the rise of BLM, Black Lives Matter?
Yeah, I think the way we do it is by creating space, and creating space is a phrase that is often used in organizing and sort of the liberal left lexicon, right? You hear that, creating space. Well, the truth is that's quite literally what we have to do. Organizers, I didn't become a professional organizer, because I said one day I wanted to be a professional organizer, right? All of a sudden I was organizing and it kind of happened, right? But now, to your point, right, particularly Generation Z, I have a great niece, who is 18, 19 years old, and she's like, "Uncle, I want to do what you do. I want to be a professional organizer," right? And so it's like there's no college readiness career track, right, to give her to help her, make those steps. And so what we have to do is we have to do what happened for us, JC, when we were growing up. We were actually being organized, and we didn't know that's what was happening, right? We're being organized by our youth pastor, right, and by our pastor. Why? What did they do? They created space for us, right? They created spaces inside of our churches that we could come and we could exercise our gifts. They created spaces where we could come and we could exercise our gifts unfettered, right? From the things that were happening outside, and giving us space to be able to do that. If you really want to allow your young people to create these spaces, it's really just giving them, I keep saying the word space a lot, but it's giving them the space. It just is, and the opportunity inside of congregations, right, to begin to do the organizing themselves, because the truth is organizers just organize. And I say that because, again, there's no career pathway towards this thing. Right. What you'll find is that there'll be a leader who will stand up, who is a young person in the Generation Z. And this is who the other young people will want to follow out, and they'll want to go to a march. They'll want to lead their own march. Sure. They'll want to say, "Hey, Pastor, we want to create a group. We want to create an organization. We want to create space inside the church where we can address these injustices." And I think the first step is just not really knowing the full roadmap or knowing exactly what to do, but it's really just opening up the doors and said, "Look, I'll just create space. I'll bring the cookies. I'll bring the pizza. I'll do whatever I need to do to give you all the space to figure it out on your own."
Yeah, yeah.
and that's a lot of the ways that it happens. Of course, with with as much parental involvement as necessary, but giving them the space to really figure out exactly how they want to organize themselves inside the community. And there's all sorts of organizations and that's how BLM got started.
Right.
And that this is how organizing happens. That's how grassroots organizing fundamentally happens.
Yeah, it's amazing to see the way in which Black Lives Matter as a formal organization. It's amazing to see how they've become that, how Black Lives Matter has become a formal organization, legit paperwork, right? When we're talking about this as a real organization here, not just a slogan, right? Not just something we say, but it's actually it's an organization. And but it's just amazing to see in the ways in which it was able to take legs, right? The ways that it was just consistently strengthened over the days and weeks, particularly after Michael Brown's fatal shooting at the hands of a police officer in the middle of the street. And so just to see it snowball to become what it has become today, particularly off of the heels of the George Floyd case, it's just really amazing. And it just really speaks to the power of what you're talking about in regards to giving people voice, giving people space, and in some ways also decentralizing leadership so that more individuals feel like they have that what they're saying is also contributing to the narrative, right?
It's really giving them, it's saying, I'm gonna open up the doors, I'm gonna give you all this space, and I'm just gonna sit back and watch. I'm not gonna dictate how it happens. I'm not even gonna dictate your language. We're gonna make sure no one is harmed here, right? We're gonna make sure no one gets injured in any kind of way, because that is the role of the adults in the village, right? To make sure that people don't get injured. But I'm really going to open up the doors and give you all the space to create what it is that you believe your community needs.
Right.
Because we have a saying in the community organizing, those closest to the pain are closest to the solutions. And so a lot of times we try to bring in, individuals who look like they've already made it. Right. And bring those individuals in to sort of dictate the space. But we can't do that. We need to bring those individuals in who are feeling the pain most acutely and are feeling the pain the most, and allow them to begin to create and dictate the spaces. And that's where you go in decentralizing power, and then putting the right safeguards around them so that everyone is protected and safe.
Listen, I want to get back to I want to get back to dealing with kind of like the millennial and Z generations and the ways in which these young people have essentially they've arrested the movement, which is love. I mean, because we know civil rights movement, there was a large youth component, right, young adult component that led that movement. So I want to get back to that when I talk about how to formulate a social justice ministry. But I want to just ask you on a personal level, as a preacher of the gospel, as a disciple of Jesus Christ, how does your ministry, right, or how does, well, I mean, in some ways, I think you can call what you do ministry. I think that organizing and what you do, particularly as a political strategist that is strategizing on the side of the least, the lost, and the left out, right? The politically oppressed. That's a form of ministry. I think what you do is ministry, from grassroots to strategy. But you as a preacher of the gospel, you as a disciple of Jesus Christ, how does your call really help shape the way that you organize? And how does your discipleship, right, of Jesus, how does it inform the way that you strategize politically and how you organize in the community?
Well, first of all, Jesus Christ, the man, whether just Jesus Christ in his body was one of the greatest organizers that has ever lived,
Indeed.
ever in the history of ever. And it's able to, we're able to bear that out because thousands of years later, we still use his actual methods for organizing to build churches and to build our movements, right? Discipleship is fundamentally organizing. It's fundamentally what it is. When you take the time to sit down and have a being an organizer is not being getting upset about something and then going out into the streets and screaming and hollering about it and then going back home. That is not being an organizer, right? That's not even being a good activist, actually. That's being someone who is getting it off your chest.
You're right.
For the moment. And that is not to say that that is not okay, right? Because we need those spaces where we can lament, right? That's why we have the whole book of Lamentations, right? So we need those spaces. But Jesus Christ discipling someone means that you have to sit down and you have to break bread with them. If you want to organize a community, you have to go and be in that community. If you want to organize formerly incarcerated people, you need to sit down with formerly incarcerated people. Yeah. If you want to organize for criminal justice reform, you have to have formerly incarcerated people sitting around the table, breaking bread, eating with them, having one-to-one conversations, understanding what's going on in their lives. If you want to do education organizing, you got to bring young people around the table and sit with them. You got to bring teachers around the table and sit with them and understand exactly what they're going through every day and understanding what hurdles they have to jump. And then your job as the organizer is to figure out how to help this group use that power, whether it's formerly incarcerated people, whether it's our students and our teachers, whomever it is. But your job is to figure out how to help them use the power that they have collected together to jump those hurdles that they're dealing with every day. That is the work of a community organizer. It's not glamorous. You don't get your name up in lights for the work that you do. But it literally, as I said before, it creates and builds culture, and it shifts and changes the things that happen in your life every day. One of the things that I really love is that my ministry, every day I get up to do my ministry. Every day I do something forward in my ministry, I affect the lives of every single person that lives in my city. When I show up at city council, when I'm helping to guide their decisions, I affect the lives of every single person. I minister to every single person who is in my city, whether they are the least and lost and let out, or whether they are the cattle that are up on the hill. I minister to everybody. When I advise a district attorney, I minister to every single person that's in Dallas County. That's millions of people. And that is what I believe that community organizing does. And it's being called to that is how I exercise that ministry out in the streets every day. It's discipleship on 100,000 million, right? That's why I need a lot of vacations and a lot of breaks.
Nah, man, for real. It's definitely not for the faint at heart. I've seen you in action. I've seen you like in the moment doing your work on several occasions. I've seen you just doing what you do, and you're always moving. I mean, you're always moving and talking and meeting people and having conversations in order to, just in order to stimulate really people's thinking around what we're doing in terms of justice work. But also, you have to raise money as an organizer. I mean, there's so many different hats that you wear as an organizer, and I just really appreciate you kind of talking about, like, even mentioning your great niece who's like, I want to do this kind of work. I want to organize people to fight for social justice or whatever kind of justice that we're doing. How would let's start here before we talk about how to put it together for a church, like the church that I serve. What do you say to that young person? Right. And I'm sure you've had these conversations. And so I hope I'm not catching you off guard with this. But what do you say to that young brother, that young sister, right, who's in the streets in Philly or in the streets in Minneapolis or in the streets in Atlanta protesting, and they're angry? King calls it righteous anger. Right. And so they're angry because they've seen somebody who looks like them, looks like their brother, looks like their father, their uncle, or their auntie shot right in the street by a police officer. It looked unjust. And this kid is angry and wants to raise hell. and and might hit the streets to do that. And but not just that though, because I essentially don't have a problem with that. My thing is though, Ed, would you tell that young person who says, I don't want to hear from anybody because all we do is hear from, no pun against these individuals, but all we hear from is Sharpton, and Sharpton's always showing up to these tragedies, and Crump is always showing up to these tragedies, and whoever else. And not saying that these individuals aren't impacting that situation, because I think that they do, but in some ways there are some younger people, Ed, who see them as pawns, political pawns in some way, and don't want to really get more immersed into the political climate in terms of voting, in terms of registering people to vote. You'll hear a lot of them say, "It doesn't matter if I vote." Right? It doesn't matter if I vote because we're going to just have we have the same individuals that are being put into office, and then we have the same people who are showing up for the strategy so they can get a photo op. What do you say to that young person who wants to march and who wants to serve in some kind of way, but they are put off by what they see on CNN?
Yeah. So I'm gonna start with just the voting part because I can answer that really quickly. The truth is, it may not matter. Hear my words. It may not matter if you vote in your elections, but I can guarantee you this much: it will matter if you do not vote. Right? It is possible that something happens to your vote. It is possible that we choose the wrong person anyway. That is all possible. But I guarantee you, it matters when you don't show up. In my city alone, right? We have over 1 million people that are in my city, and a city council person, someone who makes the laws and policies that govern your everyday movements in your city, can get elected with less than 2,000 votes. That is an atrocity. That's an atrocity. And if you would look at the voting records for your own cities and your own municipalities, they're probably around the same, right? And so just to the point of voting, right? Like I always say, again, it may not matter if you do vote, but it absolutely matters when you don't vote. Wow. Because you can't do anything about changing the people who are sitting in that seat. So that's the part about voting. But the part just about what to our young people who really want to get out and they want to do something. My question to always is, are you wanting to make a change? Right?
Right.
Or are you simply wanting to get something off your chest? Because I'm cool with either.
Right. I got you.
Because if you want to get something off your chest, I'll stand here with you. I will stand here with you. Say it to me. I'll put you in a position where you can say it loudly. You can say it to as many people as you would like to say it to, so you can get it off your chest. But if you're wanting to make a change, it's gonna cause you to have to get involved in the civic process of your community.
Sure.
That is our avenue. It is our way of changing the lived conditions of those in our community. I still believe, right, that the prosecutor has a job and their job is to put people in jail. But that doesn't change the fact, and I don't believe anybody should be going to jail. Right. And that's a whole conversation for another day, right? About our current prison industrial complex, right? Sure. But that doesn't stop me from advising the district attorney. Because it is the district attorney who is going to decide who gets put into jail and what rules are used. And if the rules are being disproportionately used against Black people, then I want to be a part of changing how that is exercised in our civic process. And so you have to get involved. There's no other way. And getting involved means doing the necessary work and educating yourself and doing all those things. And then lastly, what I want to say is, our children would have more examples of historical organizers if we did a better job of teaching them. if we did a better job of teaching them about Fannie Lou Hamer, if we did a better job of teaching them about the SCLC, if we did a better job of teaching them about Malcolm X and the work that he did with the Nation of Islam, if we did a better job of teaching them about Bayard Rustin and Ralph Abernathy and all the organizers who were behind the scenes doing all the work, if we did a better job teaching them about those individuals and not simply the individuals who happen to get the mic for good or for bad, right? Then it wouldn't be as hard to get them to be able to look at actual historical figures and be able to tell fact from fiction.
Agreed. Listen, the lights don't come on by themselves, Doc. Somebody's turning the lights on.
Somebody's got to turn them on.
Somebody's turning those lights on, and so it's not just about who hits the stage when the lights are on. It's about that brother or that sister who hit the switch, right? Exactly. And so I like the way that you put that together, man. Listen, I can't hold you much longer. I want you to just kind of give help us in as succinctly as possible, because I know that you do literally workshops on this kind of stuff. You do weekend kind of intensives with organizations around this kind of stuff. And so I know it's hard to just try to encapsulate it in a one-liner or in a 1 minute kind of answer. But Ed, for a pastor like myself, or a person who's in ministry, and an individual, particularly, I'm talking about particularly pastors here who say, you know what, I know that there's more to the gospel, right, than just what I'm preaching. It's also about what we're doing as a congregation. And so not just preaching the gospel and shouting off of it, but living it. And social justice work is a part of that living out the gospel. And so what do you say to that pastor who says, but I don't know where to start? I don't know. I know I'm interested in social justice work. I know that I have people in my congregation, particularly young adults, who are interested in social justice work, but I don't know where to start. How do I formulate a social justice ministry and what can I or what can we concentrate on as a group or as a ministry as it pertains to helping in this constant battle called social justice work? What would you say to me as a pastor who might be green, who might desire to want to do it and to organize it within my community, but I don't know where to start?
Yeah. So what I would say is that you're going to have to treat that ministry in the same way we treat any major undertaking that we do. And what we do is we go out and we get consultants and we do research. I would say the first thing you do is not try to just start something on, out of nowhere, right? If you're going to start a choir, you find the best singer, right, in the church, right? If you're going to start a sports ministry, right, you find the coach in the church, right? And that's the person you sit down with and have a conversation with. I would say it's the same thing. If you're going to start a social justice ministry, you need to go and find those individuals who are always on social media every day talking about social justice, because I guarantee somebody's in your church. You got to find that person who's actually going out to the marches. Who's the person who is volunteering with the NAACP? Who's volunteering with the Urban League and being a part? Who's volunteering with, if you're in Georgia, with the New Georgia Project and going out there and registering people to vote? Who's already doing the work?
Yeah.
And that's where you start. Go get the people who are already excited about it, bring them into a room, and then vision together. Don't dictate to them how it's going to happen, but begin to vision together. What could a social justice ministry be if not we have a social justice ministry because all of us are sitting in the room? That's not how it works, right? Because that's not how any ministry works. But it's bringing those people together and saying, what could a social justice ministry be if we decided to do it, if we decided to pick something to work on together? And then it's finding those organizations that can support you along the way. A particular organization is called Faith in Action. Mm-hmm. Faith in Action. You can Google them, faithinaction.org, and you'll find all kinds of information there across the entire United States. in, I believe, 27 states in a few different countries, where you do this particular kind of organizing, particularly for faith communities, right? And then begin to connect to those organizations that are in and around you. There's also the Black Church PAC, that is blackchurchpac.org, blackchurchpac.org. And you can connect to them, and they are, again, all over the country. And these are organizations that are already doing this work, and you can connect to them and you can get the resources that you need to make it happen.
Bet, man, bet.